welcome back to Sextras.
Where we talk about sex and all the extras.
I'm Honey, and I am not built for the heat, I have discovered.
After 21 whole years, did you finally discover that this summer?
I mean, it's always been a suspicion or a known fact, but I just, every time it surprises me.
I see, fair enough. I really can't relate though. I thrive in the sun and in the summer. I hate winter.
It's just too hot. I'm like, I can't function. I just feel useless.
I do get what you mean. Like, it is a bit much sometimes, but I love the sun. It's so nice. I love it.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, no, not for me.
Well, hi guys. I'm Maria, and my fun fact is actually related to a fun fact that was mentioned in another episode, which was that I had to get a root canal, like, soon. At that time, it was soon. And I did not get that root canal soon, apparently. Well, yeah, I just haven't gotten it. And then basically I just started getting horrible pain. And so my fun fact is that I didn't get my root canal, and therefore my face completely swelled up. Like, the entire left side of my face was just like a ball. Like, it just blew up, and it was this whole drama, and it was like the most excruciating agony and pain, and like no dentist would see me, and just it was just horrible, not gonna lie. But I'm getting it sorted, so it's all good. And yeah, like, that's part of the reason why the episode's late. I'm sorry guys, but also, to be fair, because we've had a lot of technical difficulties, but it just hasn't been fun.
Yeah, it really has not for you. I felt so bad. It was so rough.
Yeah. To be fair, thankfully my face is kind of going back to normal now, so that's good.
Yeah, guys, you should have seen. She looks so cute.
Yeah, I really did kind of blow up. Oh, maybe I'll post a picture or something.
It made me laugh so much how you texted me being like, "Hun, I look like the Michelin Man."
I did a little bit though.
Yeah, it was so cute. But yeah.
Oh god, it was so bad. Just PSA, honestly. Just take care of your teeth. Just
don't be dumb
don't
like
do
what
me.
Maria did.
Just go to the dentist. Well, actually, speaking of taking care of yourself and everything, we have a great episode this week about like mental health and mental illness and anxiety, and talking about dealing with that in relationships. And we have a really amazing guest, Honey's friend Azura. So Honey can tell you a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I met Azura because she's actually dating my flatmate at university. And we are also friends. Apart from that, she studies psychology, and yeah, she's just a really knowledgeable person, and she's gonna share some of her experiences with us with having anxiety in a relationship and kind of how she manages that in her relationship, some tips for how to manage that, how to get people to understand your mental health, because obviously it might not be something that they're going through. So yeah, I think it will be a really helpful episode for anyone who is either dating someone with a mental illness or just mental health problems in general, or someone who actually has that illness or those problems, and then kind of how to get your partner to understand a bit more. So yeah, we hope you guys enjoy. So Azura, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, yeah, so my name is Azura. I do psychology, or I did psychology, because now we're graduated.
Yay.
My fun fact would be I'm allergic to like rose stuff, that you skincare stuff you put on your face, like rose flavoured. But I really like rose flavoured food.
Same. It's so good.
Every time I put skincare on my face, I just go puffy and red and itchy.
Oh no. Okay, well, we are going to start with a segment. Actually, we have a few segments because we were being indecisive. And we asked first, what are some insecurities you have in your relationships? And the first one is, I always want to be everyone's favourite person, and then I get so sad when I realise I can't be. Classic.
Yeah, I relate to this quite a lot.
I relate to that so badly. Oh my god.
I mean, you know what's worse? It's like when they're your favourite person and you just know that you're not theirs.
That's so deep. Whose favourite person are you and you're not theirs?
Well, no, like, as in, like, my boyfriend, like, I know that he's more my favourite person than I am his, you know what I mean?
I don't know if that's really a good thing for your relationship.
Yeah, but that's just how it is.
Okay.
I kind of feel the same. Like, I think that me and Charlie, my boyfriend, are each other's favourite person. But then when he goes to, like, do things with other people and he's obviously, like, having fun with them, and I'm just like, oh my god, do I not give as much fun to, like, him?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I feel like we're, like, having the most fun when we're together. But then when he's, like, out there in the world, like, with his friends, he seems to be having so much more fun. And I'm like, hold on, like, hold on. I thought that we had the most fun, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely get, like, anxious about that. I think, like, you just have to kind of realise that there is unlimited amounts of fun that people can absorb.
Yeah. And people have, like, different fun with different people. It's fine.
Yeah. The next one, just that I can't communicate what I mean properly makes me nervy.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, no, I get that, especially in arguments. Like, it's so hard to say what you actually want to say, and, like, it's, like, really scary, and then you can't feel like you're properly communicating what is, like, that's bothering you, or, like, maybe you're just communicating in a way that is not the way that you actually want to communicate.
Yeah. Okay, the next one.
Them not believing in my potential.
That's so sad.
I kind of relate from past relationships. I also think that this comes across a bit misogynistic. A teeny bit. If it's from a woman's perspective, I can understand that feeling, because I feel like a lot of past boyfriends or past people that I've gone out with have definitely made me feel like I wasn't gonna, like, reach new heights kind of thing. As if they knew my potential and, like, they knew what was best for me.
Yeah, I guess it is quite a manly thing. They just feel entitled to success, but they don't think that women have the potential to have the same success.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up.
I mean, everyone wants to just, like, feel supported and, like, believed in.
Yeah.
So that would just be, like, really sad.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in one of my past relationships, the one before my current one, every time something happened that I, like, accomplished that was good, I would get, like, a negative response from my boyfriend, and that felt really, like, shit. I did something good and you're, like, kind of view me as competition. I remember one time, like, my past boyfriend was so bad at this. We went to play mini golf and I won, and he didn't talk to me for the rest of the day because I won against him at mini golf.
What?
Oh, God.
And I was just like, I was laughing. Like, obviously I was upset because I was like, what did I do to, like, deserve this? But it was just kind of, like, so hilarious looking back at it, because I'm just like, are you that fragile that you can't even let, like, a woman win at a novelty sports game?
They just can't take it.
Yeah, literally.
Just too much.
They're
for them.
ridiculous.
Okay, well, the next one is that they'll expect too much from me and my expectations for me are too high. Yeah, I kind of do understand this in relationships. In relationships, you should always aim to grow and grow together. So you want to work on yourself and have some self-awareness during the relationship. So naturally with that, there's, like, expectations from your partner to act a certain way, or, like, recognize certain things that you might be doing wrong, or ways that you can improve. So I kind of get feeling like, oh, they expect this of me, because some people, especially people with avoidant attachment style, already talking about attachment styles, feel really overwhelmed by people's expectations and pressure on you in a relationship to act a certain way, because it's, like, taking away from your freedom or whatever as an individual and your independence, but actually is not necessarily a bad thing. But I completely sympathise with this person, like, feeling overwhelmed. And also on the other side of that, like, obviously people can have really high expectations, and that can be a bit toxic, or, like, something that you'll just never reach, and they're kind of expecting you to be a person that you're not. So
Yeah.
you're like constantly trying to live up to that, which is just like not a nice feeling to have.
Yeah.
I kind of read it as I already have like such high expectations for myself that like within those expectations it's a product of me overthinking what they're expecting of me. And so it's like, oh, I think that they're expecting so much from me, and like since I have such high expectations of myself, I'm gonna work really hard to like get to that.
Yeah.
And it's like all kind of coming from overthinking kind of both things, as in like them having high expectations of you and then you having really high expectations of yourself. So then it's just a cycle of be better, be what they want.
There is an area of how you currently view yourself, like the reality, and then like how you kind of want to view yourself. And obviously these two circles, if you want to imagine like that, do sometimes overlap and sometimes they're really far apart. And like the further apart those two concepts are, the more unhappy you're going to be, and I guess the more high expectations you're going to put on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like a lifelong journey that everyone goes on. It's not really something you can just sort out, because obviously it's very complex. But I think it is important to kind of realise that it's okay. Whatever you see as a downfall isn't a downfall, it's just being a human.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
The next one is that I'm ugly.
That's deep.
I actually like relate to that so much. Like that's probably one of the most important things on that list for me personally. To be honest, I probably was like an ugly kid growing up.
Like everyone is there.
But like, you know, some people have like a face that really suits them when they're younger, and then people that have a face that suits them when they're an adult. I think I have that kind of face. But because I have had reactions from people growing up where I like wasn't deemed pretty or attractive, I think now, even though people say I'm pretty, I still think I'm really unattractive, and it's really difficult to have that barrier, especially in a relationship.
Yeah, you like internalize the kind of messages that you had growing up.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely relate as well. Like I feel like so many girls relate in some kind of way, or like everyone. I think everyone feels ugly sometimes. When I was younger, I really didn't feel pretty at all either, and then like suddenly at one age I felt like people started perceiving me as attractive, so then I was like, oh okay, I guess I am kind of attractive. And then I feel like I took that and I was like, okay, so now this is one of my things, and then I'm just gonna like use this, and I'm just like a hot girl and I'm just gonna shag loads of people. I kind of took it as like a reactionary thing, because like deep inside I kind of felt ugly, so then I like needed people to be like, oh no, you're not ugly because you're having sex with so many people, so obviously you're not ugly, you know. And then I don't know, I feel like that insecurity can like bleed into so many problems in dating and relationships. I really do relate to it.
No, yeah. In first year, I was exactly the same. Obviously, I had been with people in primary school, secondary school, all the way through. So people that used to think I was ugly, even though I had like started to be pretty or whatever, they still didn't treat me any differently. And then they came to uni, and then I just got so much attention from guys and from people. And I was just like, oh, okay, so like I must objectively be attractive. And then I did just... because I had that past insecurity, I did what you said. Like I just slept with a lot of people to kind of manage the insecurity that I was scared that I was unattractive, even though I wasn't.
Yeah. I totally get you.
Yeah.
But I think that's a big part of growing up as well. I recognise so much of what you guys are saying. I notice it in my standards with people as well, like who I go for or who goes for me. I'm kind of just like, oh yeah, they like me and they find me attractive, so I must be interested in them because of that. And it's like, actually no, you can actually go for people that you find attractive too. It's not just about you and your attractiveness, and it's not even all about attractiveness anyway. It's also about if you like the person as a person.
Yeah, I mean that's also an important thing. If you do have insecurities that you perceive yourself as ugly, it's also important to realize that like appearance is not your entire worth. I mean, I have to like write affirmations down every day just to regulate it, but it's important to realize your strengths, and so many are not appearance wise.
Yeah. It's like a massive unlearning of all these things we've been conditioned to think. You have to recognize that you bring so much more to the table, and if you're already dating someone, then it's likely that they already recognize that. They're probably not just with you because you're hot, they're probably with you for all these other reasons. And if it's in your platonic relationships, well, they're obviously not friends with you because you're hot. Like, who does that? No one does that. So they recognize that you have these innate qualities that make you a good friend.
The next one is that I'm too much, like too needy, too obsessive, etc.
I think this comes from like a similar kind of insecurity.
I think as you were talking about attachment styles, I think it's kind of a mix of you not feeling like you perhaps can't be yourself, and then also an anxious attachment style, because I have an anxious, sometimes secure attachment style, depending on my mood. But I think it is definitely an overreaction to how you think people are perceiving you as, especially if someone makes you feel like you're obsessive, needy, or like clingy, etc. They're probably like not the right person, because that just means they can't handle all of your greatness.
Yeah. Sometimes people can bring out that side of you as well, and that's a big red flag as well. People should be reaffirming you and reassuring you and making you feel good enough at all times.
Feeling obsessive and too needy is also a reaction from someone manipulating you as well.
Keep an eye out for that one. Go listen to our toxic relationships episode. The next one is that they'll leave again, kind of.
Anxious attachment vibes.
Yeah, very much anxious attachment vibes. Also avoidant attachment vibes, but just like playing out in a different way, you know? The next one.
That they're gonna stop loving me or cheat on me or love someone else. We're still continuing along the same vein, I realise, but I just kind of wanted to talk about like maybe the cheating a bit, but like if you've been cheated on before and all of that kind of shit, like it can be so hard to move on with your relationships with that trauma or like reminder. There's so many insecurities in relationships that sort of like stem from one place and then can really continue on along your like dating history and really impede your growth.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, people talk as if like, oh, you just like need to get over them and then you forget about that and you go into a new relationship. But there is just a lot of baggage that does accumulate. And if you have been cheated on, or if someone has said hurting things, that kind of behaviour, you're obviously going to take that on to the next relationship you have, because that's like the reality that you've experienced.
Yeah, this is why it's so important to learn about people's exes and like about their past relationships. I just will never understand why people are like, yeah, I don't really like care about your exes, like we don't need to talk about it. Yes, you do, because there's so much baggage that you probably won't know about until you're like deep into the relationship, and then you need to unpack all of those things and be like, okay, where is this coming from? Everyone has baggage, and on the other side of things, you should also like remind yourself that the person you're dating now is not the person you were dating before. You need to kind of unlearn those patterns of thinking as well. Anyway.
My anxiety makes me a little clingy and annoying sometimes.
Sounds like all of our followers have anxious attachment style.
As an anxiously attached person and someone that has anxiety, before when you guys were kind of saying like, oh, the feeling too annoying or like too clingy and stuff and obsessive, I feel like I spend so much of the time feeling that way. And then so much of the time I kind of spend it like excusing why I am being too clingy or too obsessive and too annoying. And it's like a lot of that is because my anxiety or like my attachment style is just like kind of guiding me to do that, when like realistically I don't really need to be that clingy or obsessive about this specific thing. Sometimes you kind of just need to like take a step back and be like, oh wait, like this isn't what's going on at all. You don't need to grab on right now. And I mean, that is exactly what anxious attachment is. You do that when there's not really any need for that. So I don't know, I think a lot of these things, it's like catching out that you're also doing them and like stopping yourself from doing them, not so much that's just the way you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of links into mental health as well. You're experiencing this and it is your experience and it's valid, but also you are able to learn to take yourself out of that situation, look at what's going on, and on purpose do something else that can avoid a bad situation, any triggers, the feeling of being too needy. Because I definitely also feel that, like when, for example, my boyfriend goes to like do something with someone else or like just does something whilst I'm not there, like the moment when he's like, oh, I'm gonna leave now, that 10 seconds of him leaving, I get so anxious and I'm like, no, he can't leave, something's gonna happen if he leaves, like I can't be on my own. And I have that like it sounds really stupid, but it just has been really tough to just step out of that and be like, I'm in my house, I'm safe, like he's just doing something, he'll be back in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like it's not the end of the world.
Okay, the next one. That if I'm in a really bad state mentally for too long, they're gonna leave me or stop loving me.
For people that are like mentally ill or like experience mental illness, I feel like that's kind of a real fear sometimes, which can then be like also exacerbated because you are mentally ill, so the mental illness is like making it worse. But like I feel like it is something that people kind of think about. It's like, oh, but I'm so depressed, like what if they can't love me through this? What if this takes too long to come out of and like they leave? And I think that can be just a worry that people that experience like mental illness might have, that it's like, what if this person doesn't understand? Or maybe not even a worry, it's like something that people experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just can't deal with relationships with people that experience mental illness.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, I think. Personally for me, like sometimes if I'm not in a good mental state, I'm like, I know this is not a good idea for me to be in a relationship because I just can't think about the other person right now. I need to just think about myself. And there should be a certain amount of reciprocation in a relationship, so I think it's important to have that awareness as well.
I think communication is the most important thing. It's obviously a lot easier said than done, but this is a lesson that I had to definitely learn. Like I'm constantly, one could say in a bad state mentally because I'm just constantly anxious about a lot of things, and it's tiring for myself to regulate it. It's tiring for like my boyfriend sometimes, but we just talk about it a lot. We think, like, we talk about triggers, like we talk about what we can do, like when I start to feel anxious or like when certain symptoms of my anxiety appear. And I think if you, like as you said, like sometimes if you're in a bad state, it's not good for you personally to be in a relationship. But if it is, and you do enjoy being in a relationship with someone, and obviously if it's a mental illness, you'll have it long term. I think it's important to talk to the person you're going out with and not be afraid of it, because you need to like work together, like you're a team. You're not just like two people that are judging and only being there for like good times.
Yeah, and I think that's a big benefit of being in a relationship for a long time, is that you get to know each other and the person can get to know your patterns and your mental health, and as you said, like the triggers, and they'll understand it more. And that just comes with communication, as you said, and it just takes a while to get to know someone, but like once you do, then you'll understand more where the other person is coming from, rather than they're just kind of like suffering alone, and then it will feel less like work. I know that's the wrong word, but
yeah. Well, just to add on from that, the last one is my moods are so up and down and it can be a lot, and I'm so inconsistent as a friend. So again, I think that also comes from communication, getting to know each other more, and then it's like, that about the inconsistent moods, you learn how to regulate that, as in like you can help each other, like kind of how Azura was saying, like you're more a team.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. So, how did you break your mental health to your significant other, and how did they take it? The first one is, yes, I've never withheld and I've never had any negative reactions.
That's good.
Yeah, very good.
A great one to start off, good vibes. Okay, the next one is, they were accepting as long as I worked on myself and didn't treat them like a therapist, lol. That seems like a fair enough caveat.
Yeah, and then the person who feels like they're being the therapist should also set boundaries and be like, okay, I obviously want to help you work through stuff, and I will get onto this a bit later, I guess, but there's only like a certain amount I can do, so maybe I can help you with these things, or I can help you to an extent, but maybe you should also talk to your friends or a professional, and that will help you as well.
Yeah, and like no one likes hearing someone complain about the same thing all the time, and you're like giving advice and they're just like having a pity party for themselves, and they're not going to do anything. And like I know that mental illness is not the same as that, but I think like the whole, as long as I work on myself, that doesn't look like, oh, I'm just fixed tomorrow and like, I'm not going to be depressed anymore. It's more like I'm committed to wanting to better myself, and I'm just not just going to like let this wash over my life. I feel like that's like an all right thing to say that you will do. to be in a relationship with someone, you know, like the meeting in the middle thing.
Yeah,
Sure. Definitely. The next one is, yes, my current partner, my fiance, has always been supportive. I had an ex that broke up with me though.
Imagine you being like, I'm depressed, and they're like,
Goodbye.
Yeah, what the fuck?
That just shows the immaturity of your ex. If someone is gonna break up with you because of mental health issues, they're obviously ignorant to life.
To be fair, at the same time, I do want to validate that not everyone can handle that kind of relationship, or I don't know what the specific person struggles with, but like it might have just not been something that they could handle.
So the next one is, yes, and they found it difficult to understand at first, but now it's amazing and helps loads. Yeah, I mean, I think it can be difficult for people to understand at first, especially if they're not going through a similar thing, because they just physically cannot comprehend what that might be like.
People that don't have anxiety, like probably the only time they have anxiety is before their driving test or before an exam. When that is the only time you experience anxiety, it's quite difficult to imagine that that's the state someone is in constantly about everything.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, my boyfriend was in disbelief, kind of being like, oh, why can't you just like not feel like that? But you know, it does take time to kind of explain how real the situation is for you. But yeah, when he did, he like is so amazing. He tries so hard to avoid triggers. Like if we go into a shop and it's really busy, he'll just be like, do you want to leave? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
I think it's just the willingness to want to help and want to understand, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Next one, he knew from the first day, I'm also a mental health nurse, so we talk about it openly. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's like a first date kind of confession?
I guess it kind of depends on the person. Like, I don't think you should feel obliged to say it on the first date, but also if it's not like a massive thing that you have to like sit down and be like, I have to tell you something, I'm depressed, you know, like I think that can also make it seem really intense, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If you want it to be that way, it can, but for some people they'll just like drop it in conversation and that's like enough for them to mention it. But yeah, if someone told me that on the first date, I wouldn't be like, oh, whoa, like, calm down. That's just like how they are. Okay, the next question is, how has a partner helped you manage your mental illness? Someone said they gave me the stability and routine to get myself stable. Love him for that.
Yeah, I can relate to just needing the stability and the routine, and like having someone to help you with that is quite good. I'm not very good at routine. Someone else said they called and came to visit me so we can just sit together and make sure I've taken my meds every day. The best is just showing up, just being there, and you don't necessarily have to do anything a lot of the time. I feel like a lot of people feel pressured to like do something or say the right thing, but a lot of the time it's just like about being there and like letting them not feel like they're going through it alone.
Yeah.
The next one is, he helps me get out of my anxiety spirals, or helps me realize when I'm in them, I guess.
Sometimes you're like mentally ill brain talking to you and kind of like telling you all these things, and it's like just nice to have someone that's like rational and doesn't have that voice. Just be like, no, this is what's happening, like don't worry. That you don't have to take it there, you know.
Okay, the next one. Yes, learns my triggers, helped me pay for therapy, listens and doesn't try to solve.
Yes, get you a man that pays for your therapy.
Yes. Perfect. Literally
Where can I find one?
You need to get like a sugar daddy who's like also a therapist. Although I feel like maybe that's a bit problematic.
Someone else said they've only ever been detrimental to it.
Attachment to them brought me happiness, so their attention, validation, making me laugh, making me feel wanted. He didn't directly help, it was unknowingly. Sounds like he's a really, really good person.
Yeah. And then we did a poll. We asked, are you mentally ill? and 81% of people said yes and 19% of people said no. Yeah, we were just curious, to be honest. This is like, you know, part of our scientific research journey that we're on.
Yeah, seems like we've got a lot of mentally ill people listening to the podcast.
Yeah, and then we did another poll where we asked, if you are mentally ill, would you prefer to have a partner who is also mentally ill or prefer for them not to be? And 33% of people said a partner who is also mentally ill, and 67% said a partner who is not also mentally ill. So I guess this is kind of like relating back to what we were saying about, like, you know, sometimes you do need that like rational person to kind of ground you, or sometimes to people who like have their own mental health issues in a relationship, it might just kind of be a little bit of a cycle, like
a clash.
And I have like kind of experienced that, so I kind of understand why that would be a problem.
What do you guys think? What would you vote?
I mean, I would actually vote for like I don't mind.
Yeah, Azura said she wanted an I don't mind option. Yeah, I mean, I also think it's like you can't really choose your partner based on like,
do you have
mentally ill or not? You know, you might just fall in love with someone and like that's how it is. Okay, so yeah, I guess should we start by talking about mental health just as a concept? Like, we wanted to kind of, well, Azura was saying she kind of wants to talk about, not to just pin it on you, like that, the difference between like mental health and mental illness, which I think is important, especially like in the context of relationships, to like both help you understand like maybe what the other person is going through, and also to like clarify to yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously like everyone, I don't believe that there's anyone that has not experienced mental health issues. Maybe perhaps I just think that some people aren't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
This world is very negative.
Yeah.
Like the real world is very negative, like, and it will affect you. You're not like some perfect person that like is unaffected by like all this shit stuff that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is like a really important like separation that needs to be done between mentally ill and like mental health issues, because medically that means if everyone's just poured into the same situation, the people that like really need help won't get it, because that just like basically means that everyone needs help, but like that isn't exactly the case. So I do think it's important to recognise if you are mentally ill, but also recognise if it's a mental health issue, if you're going through something that even like a mental health issue can still last like 2 years, and that's still not mentally ill, that's just a situation that you have been put in by your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean.
But I think like it's a separation that needs to be made, but also with the stress on don't devalue like people's feelings. Like it's still, both of them are still very real and very important. It's just having a mental illness is like cognitively like deep rooted in your brain, and it's how your brain works, whereas like mental health issue is just how you've experienced something bad and you're badly reacting to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like the distinction also helps with like destigmatizing mental illness in a way, because a lot of ignorant people or whatever think that mental illness is something that just happens to like this kind of person or that kind of person. I don't know, just like someone that has been through like a really hard life or really specific trauma in their childhood, or you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When realistically everyone experiences like mental health issues at some point or another, because everyone inherently has to like look after their mental health, like their physical health, like it's part of everyone's lives. So, you know, that kind of gives us the ability to empathize with people that actually experience mental illness, because we can kind of experience those things to some, I don't know, everyone can kind of experience those things to some capacity.
Yeah. And it can help you to like understand, like you can kind of contextualize what the other person is feeling based on, you know, your own experiences, even if it was like a brief moment where you felt something similar. You're like, okay, well, this is how that person feels, maybe all the time, maybe like more regularly than I did in that moment, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think like it's definitely an important distinction. And yeah, we kind of want to talk about both mental health and like how you deal with it just like by yourself, which we always want to talk about on the podcast. I feel like it's important, especially with the people, like the age of people that listen to our podcast. Like, I feel like it's very prevalent in our generation. I don't know if that's because, I mean, I don't know. You probably know better than I do.
why our generation has so many mental health issues.
Yeah.
I think obviously like in the past 100 or 200 years, like these issues like and minorities and discrimination has always happened, but obviously under the radar, or it's been accepted, or people just repress it because that's just what you have to do to survive if no one will accept your existence.
Yeah.
And obviously in the past like few decades, I mean it started happening in the 50s, but like there was still that like repression, and so like a lot of people ignored it, like racism, sexism, like ageism, all these different things. So I think in the past 30 years or whatever, there have been like, it's been okay, like now it's like, okay, there's these issues and now we're actually allowed to like emotionally experience it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like our mental health has gotten worse because we're kind of like nearly, not at the end, but we're at everything's out in the open now.
Yeah.
And like you're actually able to experience everything and not just ignore it or oppress it or just like pretend it doesn't exist. Like these issues do exist, and like even though long term that makes like the world eventually get to a better place, like I think our generation, and probably like obviously younger generations as well, I just feel like there are so many issues that need to be solved.
Yeah. And also you're just like constantly confronted by all the issues because we like have phones and have social media. Well, I guess we wanted to talk a bit about as well like how mental health impacts your relationship. Like you wanted to talk a bit about as well like telling your experience with telling your partner about your mental health and like him learning, which I think is like really helpful for other people to kind of apply, because I do think, as we have seen in the segment, people find it really hard to like communicate exactly how they feel with their partner, or maybe their partner just really like struggles to understand where the other person is coming from, or you know exactly what's going on in their mind. So do you want to like tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you?
I mean all of my relationships before the one that I have currently have been quite bad. Like I have always had anxiety and worry since I was like started to, you know, talk and started to have opinions of the world. I would always worry horrendously about everything, and like so being in that kind of constant state of like not feeling safe or like not knowing what's going to happen, and like the uncertainty in that, it's definitely like ended up being me, and I would just ignore it. And like then in my past relationships I would just kind of react in a way that like my anxiety wants me to react in, and that as well as me making that mistake and not putting like my anxiety aside and being like, oh, this is an issue I need to sort out. The people that I went out with didn't value like my point of view, or like definitely just took me for granted, definitely manipulated me in many different ways. So like it's only recently that I've been able to process my anxiety and like be supported by it. So it's been like a really rough journey for me personally, but like telling my current boyfriend about it is just so cathartic, especially how he helps. Like I have had such a negative response to talking about my anxiety that when he responded positively, it kind of is like, oh, that's not meant to happen, like something bad's meant to happen. Like, they're meant to say like you're crazy or something, which is like again an issue in itself. Like the first step is to realize that like the person that you're talking to is not your past, like how we were talking about earlier, and like that is such a real and such a difficult problem to overcome.
Yeah.
Had you sort of like brought up your anxiety before with other people that you dated and then just like reacted badly, or was this like the first time that you'd even said it out loud?
No, I have actually said it quite a few times to past people, just with a bad reaction. I think the main like theme that would occur in past relationships is that it's not attractive, like that having a mental illness isn't attractive, and like therefore that's like my fault and like a downfall of me. Like I would be in, for example, like I was quite quiet in public. I would like ask them, you know, maybe sometimes I would ask them to buy a drink for me rather than me like going to the counter, or like when we would meet their friends I wouldn't talk as much, or like I wouldn't talk as much when we'd order food, stuff like that. And then afterwards they'd be like, why can't you talk more, like why can't you be more confident, like that's so much more attractive if you're just like confident. And they wouldn't accept like that's just, they like it would be my issue, and that it's like, you know, less points to me because I'm not as confident as they want me to be.
That's so stupid.
No, I know. And we got in like a few, like my past relationship before this one, we did get in a few arguments because he was so obsessed with looking perfect, like publicly just being amazing, like no faults, just absolutely like flawless.
That's
like,
unattractive.
Which is unattractive in itself. And then when I would just be my true self, and sometimes I do say do mistakes or do something that isn't traditionally attractive, like just being more quiet or just like not really talking as much, or like saying like, oh, do you mind if we leave the shop, like I feel a bit anxious. Like they would just be like, why can't you just be confident and like live your life, like why do you have to be like this? So I have had like that was kind of the perspective of my anxiety. And like my boyfriend now, obviously he didn't like immediately go like, yes, I understand, I'm here to help, like like obviously he wasn't like that, and he was like confused and definitely like was overwhelmed at the start, because I don't think he realised how, if you have clinically diagnosed anxiety, I don't think a lot of people understand how much that changes your perception and your life of everything. So it was a massive like learning curve for him to understand how I view the world. But like when he did that, like everything was a lot easier because we could just work together as a team. And like I really appreciate that.
And how did you like get him to understand? Was it like just like a lot of conversations and you kind of like describing what it's like, or what kind of helped get him to sort of understand or see how to help?
I would kind of just describe the situation, ask him how he interprets the situation, and then say how I interpret the situation and like compare.
Oh yeah, that's a really good way.
For example, if he sent me a message and I took it personally, like I would be like, okay, how would you read this message? Oh, I read it in this way, or like you did this, you didn't think anything of it, or like whatever, you didn't think that was important, but from my perspective I saw it as this way. And like doing that kind of makes him realize like my agency and realize how I see things different to his expectations of how he sees things. But like obviously that's quite difficult to understand, that some like how you view is not like the objective view of everything.
But I feel like that's quite good though. I feel like everyone should be doing that regardless of whether they have like mental health problems, because inevitably, even if you're the most mentally healthy person in the world, you still are going to see things differently to how someone else sees it. So you should like try to understand more the way your partner interprets things. And I've never even like thought of doing that, to be honest, but I'm kind of like, wow, this is a good tip.
I also like if there's an environment that we're in, like a pub or a party or like just a busy shop, I will kind of go like, oh, is there anything that you can see that is like potentially like dangerous or like harmful to you? And he's like obviously like, no, this is just a pub. And like to me it's like, oh well, I could get like sensory overload I get quite often, where everything's just loud and everything feels really claustrophobic. When I am worried about something, I get like a million thoughts at once, like, oh, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, I don't know if like this, like, you know, when you get if you're like scared of flying, you're like, oh, I might lose my bag, it might crash, or we might have really bad turbulence, like who I'm meeting at the airport might not even be there, like so many different things. Like I think about all these different scenarios at once within the situation, and it's like that's what I have to tell my boyfriend for him to realize that I'm constantly like on the lookout for like danger, even though there's none there.
Yeah. The amount of times that I'll be like kind of just talking my boyfriend through like something that I'm kind of thinking about, like a dilemma I have in the moment or whatever, you know, and I'm just like, I'm saying the million things that could like happen if I do this versus if I do this, you know what I mean? Or like the million ways that things could go wrong in this or whatever. And he's always just like, what are you talking about? Like he literally just does not like cannot relate at all. So I like definitely see that, like seeing how you read situations or like how you experience a situation versus how they're experiencing it, to like really understand what you're going through and therefore like be able to help you, or like just be able to sympathize with like what you're going through, you know.
Do you mind talking a bit about kinds of things that make you anxious? I mean, you said sensory overload, and
I don't know if you guys have spoken about sensory overload, but it's obviously a term that I know from taking psychology, but it can probably just be best described as having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, and that is like the first kind of sensation that you feel when you're having like one of those attacks, and it is just like suffocating. You feel like a lot of your brain becomes hypersensitive to like your senses, and you just think that like it's very loud, like people around you are like too close, like something could happen, someone might like be behind you, like make you jump, like you just feel like paranoid. Like that is like the best feeling to describe it. So I do feel sometimes that can kind of just like jump at me like out of nowhere, and I do kind of get like worried about something that like doesn't even like exist. Like I'll just be like in my house on my own and I just like start panicking. With my anxiety, it's kind of like, okay, I need to stop, like why am I anxious, like where is this coming from? But like I do have a lot of like I was bullied quite a lot when I was in primary school and in secondary school, so I do have quite a lot of insecurities, and like I do have the urge to people please all the time. That in terms of like me being insecure and like wanting people to like me, and if they don't, like I'm an awful person, like those kind of things all like interlock to create like the anxiety that I experience.
Well, I was wondering about sort of like what are some ways, like I know you've said sort of like helps you avoid triggers, things like that, but are there any like specific things that you can point to that your boyfriend has sort of like started doing or does or has helped you in the past with?
Yeah, I ask him to definitely say like supportive phrases if I'm starting to worry, like just saying like it's okay, like you're safe, all these things, which for him don't cost anything. It's literally 3 words, but it definitely makes me feel a lot better. So we do talk about some phrases that make me feel better, and then, you know, when I start to get anxious, he just like tells them to me, reassures me that like I am safe and everything is okay. And we do talk about like specific triggers. A lot of the time when we're out in public, I worry so much that people can see my anxiety that I like start to panic about it, when obviously no one is looking at me and no one gives a fuck. But like, you know, it's just like things like, I know, him hugging me, or like him asking if we need to sit down. Obviously I've told him that this is what I need you to ask me, because like I'm not going to be like, I'm anxious, I will sit down, I will have a drink, I will be fine. Like sometimes like when I'm panicking, I don't think about these things. So yeah, I ask him to do these like little things that obviously will be different for different people, but these kind of like small activities like help me calm down personally.
So it's like the helpful stuff that he does is, do you think it's like all stuff that you've specifically like spoken to him about? I mean, like this is what would help, or like has he even come up with like helpful stuff on his own from just like understanding what's going on? Do you know what I mean? Do you think it's a bit of both, or like do you think it's really important to like, definitely, I feel like I kind of just say like, oh, this is the way I think, and it's like I just expect them to then be like, okay, so I know that I have to do this, and like, you know, come up with their own care plan. But I feel like a lot of the time you have to like specifically actually say this is what would be helpful, like this is what you need to do, because it's hard for the people to just come up with that on their own. Do you know what I mean? So sorry, back to the question, do you think it's like a mix of both, or?
No, it's definitely a mix of both. Like, if I just sat there and like expected him to like know what to do, it probably won't turn out very well. But no, yeah, like I've definitely said to him, like, these are the specific things that I really need you to do when I'm starting to like feel really anxious, or just day to day like really makes me feel more at ease. But he has also just like, you know, him being supportive, him taking things more slower, like talking slower, like being less loud. Like, I didn't ask him to do any of those things. Like, he just, you know, put two and two together and kind of realized this probably helps a lot, and it does help.
I feel like talking to your partner about like your mental health or mental illness or whatever, it's not just like sit down, have a conversation about like, I have anxiety and this is how it is and this is what you can do to help. Like, I feel like there's stuff that's coming up all the time, and like it kind of sounds like you and your boyfriend kind of have this like ongoing dialogue about like your anxiety and what's kind of going on, what might be helpful and unhelpful or whatever. What do those conversations sort of look like when you're in a relationship, rather than just like sharing the first time like, oh, I have anxiety? It's like, how does the conversation like keep evolving?
Yeah, I mean, my anxiety is always with me, and it's not of like specific topics. It always changes. Like, this time last year I was definitely anxious about completely different things which I thought would last forever, or that I have now come to terms with, and you know, now other things have like popped up that I'm worried about. I think for me personally, like, I do psychology, so my brain definitely works in like a why kind of like way. Like, I'm anxious, like, why am I anxious? Because it's loud. Why am I anxious when it's loud? And I do have to like backtrace like into my childhood, like, and then I explained that to Charlie. Like, my dad shouted at me a lot when I was a kid, and he was quite angry. So, you know, because of that, and because of that's how I expect people to be, like, I'm afraid of it, but like I expect people to always be like that. So like, you know, when Charlie is, if he is sometimes loud by accident, like, that's why I get anxious. Or like, if we're in a pub and someone started a fight or something, like, that's why I'm anxious, because someone close to me has treated me like that, and that means that I'm unsafe. So now I feel unsafe. I am anxious because someone who I don't know is having a fight like across the room. But like, I think obviously I don't know how hard it is to do that, to backtrace your emotions until you find the root cause, because that is very difficult to do. But as I said, I've like been trained to like do that, so I kind of am able to backtrace until I can explain in steps like the workings out of like why I'm anxious currently. That's like one of the main types of conversations I have with Charlie, because it definitely helps him understand a lot more thoroughly, rather than I'm just anxious right now because it's loud, full stop.
Do you ever worry that like maybe you rely a little bit too much on Charlie, like, or on your boyfriend for... No, I'm not like, it's not my opinion, but as in like, as someone that's mentally ill, I feel like I kind of like relate to relying on people kind of to help you through your stuff, because, you know, like, that's what people are for. Like, people are there to help you and whatever, you need a support. But like, do you ever worry that you've kind of like ingrained too much of your sort of like coping into your boyfriend and into your relationship, and then like, if he's not there, then what are you gonna do, kind of thing?
No, yeah, I definitely have that worry a lot of the time. I do have to remind myself that like the ongoing dialogue that I have with Charlie exists when Charlie isn't there as well. I kind of just have to try my best to, you know, be that other person and create the separate perception of the situation that Charlie will have. But like, you know, when he's not there, someone else needs to like, I need to create that separate perception, which is again like more work that you have to do. But of course I do worry that I rely too much on Charlie, because he does help a lot. But I think like me and him have such a deep like, we have such a deep connection, and like we want to be together for like forever. So, so like we both know like it's okay, like these like some other people might see them as risks, or like obviously, you know, if you have commitment issues, it might be like quite difficult to come to terms with this. But like we both have like a deep bond where we both know that like we do rely on each other. When we're not there for each other, it is difficult, but like we're just learning to. As I said, like even though I do psychology, I'm not perfect in mental health. Like I just know that I still need to work on a lot.
Just because like you maybe do rely on him for some things and he does help a lot with your mental health, that can then facilitate your like own like self-soothing in a way. And
knowing that Charlie has that, like I can rely on Charlie, does put me at so much ease, and it does help me stop panicking. Even like I don't even need to act on the reliance I have on him without, because I then already have like this reliance like hovering like around me, being like, you know, if I need help I can have help, but then that kind of takes away the power of my anxiety, because you know there's already like a safe haven like here, even if it isn't physically here.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I think it's such a hard line, because it's like people are so judgy, or like not judgy, but like people say all the time like, oh, you have to like learn to be able to cope on your own and all of this stuff. But it's like, as I said earlier, like people are always then saying like, oh, you need a good support system, and it's kind of like treading that line of like, I need this person to like help me through this, but then it's like I need to also be able to do this by myself in a way. But I don't know, it's hard, but I think that there's no shame in like people helping you. And I feel like people sometimes make it that way when I don't really think it should be that way.
No, I agree, like completely. Like it is so like
we're social people.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's really like trendy to be like you need to love yourself before you can like love other people, or like before you can help others. And like I do obviously understand, but it's also at the same time like I feel like that's just asking like when I'm perfect I'm gonna then like love someone else. Like you're never gonna come to that conclusion if you think in that way, or think that something's always like wrong with you, but nothing is wrong with you. You're just like everyone is like unique and has different things that are going on.
Yeah. And I think a good way to sort of escape the like, okay, now they've left and I have nothing, like I have no one to help me, or like there's not, I can't do this by myself, because I feel like that's kind of how I felt when my relationship ended, because my ex was like the only person that really like knew how to deal with all my problems and like kind of like knew how to comfort me or whatever. I don't know, after that I was kind of like, oh, maybe it's just a case of like there's a few people in the world that know the secrets of like how to calm Maria down and like how to ease this or whatever, because then it's like, okay, then if we break up then it's okay, because my mum knows how to do this too, so she can help me.
So like, because I'm like very conscious of the people listening who are like don't really like know what gives them anxiety, or like maybe they are experiencing anxiety and they didn't even realize it was anxiety. But like, do you think there's anything that you experience that a lot of people would also experience, like that gives them anxiety, or like a common kind of theme that people can relate to?
I think a lot of things to do with like identity is really important, and definitely is probably, I mean, that is insecurities are part of your identity. I do think sexual orientation and also gender is definitely a massive like situation that a lot of people get anxious about and feel insecure about, and perhaps don't even know that they do feel like that. I myself am non-binary and also bi, so it's like two situations which like I have been like terrified. Like Charlie, my boyfriend, is the first person that I've like said this to, because in the past relationships I just wasn't comfortable and I knew that they'd like completely judge me on it, and it's really difficult to come to the conclusion and like that it's okay to tell people, and to feel safe as well, knowing like they're gonna respond in a good way. Like in first year I wore loads of street stuff and I really liked like baggy clothes, and I went to like several parties and like several like people's houses, and they'd all just assume I was like straight lesbian, and I would just be like, why are you assuming this? Like, and it wasn't even just like, oh, I think they know that, or like not know because I'm not, but like I think that they think this. Like they would genuinely like, I would be talking, I mean this was when I was single, so I'd be talking about a guy that I found attractive to my friends, and like someone who I didn't really know would be like, oh, like I don't think you were interested in guys, like why, what? And I would just be like, what? And then they'd be like, aren't you like gay? And I was just like, no. Like, so many people would assume that, which obviously added to my anxiety, because I was like, oh, I'm not even a lesbian. Like, yeah, I'm not straight, but I'm not even like full gay, and yet some people think that I am, and they assume, and they then create like this weird like fake person that isn't even me. I think a lot of people can probably relate to being falsely judged, or, you know, avoiding saying anything because they are being judged, like, or worried that they will be judged. And definitely with like being non-binary, it's definitely difficult to like explain it to people. Like, I know our generation like is obviously a lot more entwined with like the LGBTQ plus community, but like I have said like the phrase non-binary to my friends, and they were just like, we don't know what that is. And it's really difficult. Like, I mean, I definitely had the feeling, like the anxiety of non-binariness before I even knew what it was called, and it was just like, I know it's like a massive product of my upbringing. Like, I was bullied a lot by girls, like only girls, up until university. So it was so difficult to like be friends with girls, to talk to girls. Like, I didn't identify with girls because like they were like my enemy, because they just weren't nice to me. And it definitely created this identity that like I wasn't okay, so I'm not them because they don't like me and they don't accept me. But then like I'm obviously not a boy because I'm not a boy. Because like I had friends who were boys, and I was like, yeah, I get on with them better than girls, but then I'm not really, like, I don't see, like, we're not the same like identity. So I did feel like I was just in this like grey area. And like still like throughout first year and second year of university, I would feel fine, and then I'd have phases of just feeling like really like strangely alienated from everyone around me. And I generally thought like, oh, maybe I'm depressed, maybe like something's going on, and maybe I'm like dissociating. And it's just, I just realised that I was so scared to like think about why I don't identify with like either binary genders, and like why I'm so terrified of talking to people about it. And like obviously like your anxiety is only going to take you so far. Like, so I think if you say to someone like, oh, I'm gay, or like, oh, I'm trans, or like I'm non-binary, like some people are going to react badly. That's not your fault. You don't know who's going to react good or bad. I can't really give any advice on that, but I think it's definitely something that I think probably a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I think especially because we're like in a time, as you were saying, where like we are so aware of even just like mental illnesses because of social media, or because of the amount of information we have available to us, and also like sexuality, like sexual orientation, gender presentation, and just gender identities. We are aware that we have like these names to put to feelings, but then it's still not really recognized as like the norm. So then like, I don't know, I haven't experienced it, so I don't want to speak for you, but then, well, I've experienced like realizing I'm bi, so then like coming to terms with that and like trying to kind of match the feeling, or like the confusion of, oh, I like girls and I like guys, what is that like normal, to then like matching that with kind of the word bisexuality, or like with the term to what you're feeling, is such a like confusing journey, and something that I think most of the population probably experience. But yeah, can you talk a bit about like how you like came to terms with being non-binary, or even how you just like recognized that was, because you were saying it kind of felt like a grey area, so how did you realize, oh, this is what I'm feeling, like I am non-binary, or not feeling, but
yeah. The world around us is so binary, like it's so like built for women or men, so it's really difficult to have all these new definitions of emotions of identity that didn't exist when you were a kid. Or like maybe they did, like obviously some did, but like didn't exist in your world when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to then have these like, you know, when you think of a man, you think of so much more than just the word man, but then when you think of all these new words that like the queer community has made, it is like, it they do kind of come across as just words, because they're just like, oh, it's just like something that someone has just made up, but it's like really difficult to like define your entire identity on this like new concept that someone has just like presented to you. So like as I said, the whole of first and second year I didn't really think about it that much. Like I was just like, oh, sometimes I just feel a bit strange. And it wasn't until I follow some artists who are trans and who are non-binary, and like I was like, oh, like do they talk about it? And I researched into Arca is like one of my favorite artists, and she's like trans and also non-binary. And I was just listening to the stuff that she was talking about and other artists, and I just realized like, oh, I like get what they're saying, like this makes sense to me. And it kind of was just like an epiphany. It sounds so cheesy, but it was just like, oh, okay, I'm not like confused, I'm not like having like these weird depressive episodes that like I don't understand. It is generally like I don't fit into the cis woman identity, and that's okay. Yeah, because I don't have any friends apart from like maybe like 3 friends who are like queer. So it's really difficult personally for me to like give myself that support, because there's no one around me to be like, oh, look, what you're feeling is okay, or like hang out with us because we're all like experiencing the same thing. Like I don't have that, so I definitely have had to like give myself my own little like bubble of safety.
Yeah.
Loads of people feel different, but it's only like now people are acknowledging that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about like recognizing how people describe things in like music and stuff is so like interesting and important as well, because another thing that people are always saying is like, oh, we need more representation. It's so easy to hear that and be like, yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but why? But it's literally because someone will be describing something that so many people will then hear and like relate to that, and because we don't really have the language to like talk about it or acknowledge that these are things that people experience from a young age, people grow up like not really knowing how to describe how they're feeling until they like have someone else put it into words, or like they see other people describing their experiences. Yeah, I just think it's important, and like it's Pride Month, I feel like we should acknowledge that, you know.
Happy Pride Month.
Yeah, happy Pride Month. How do you think knowing that you're non-binary now has like positively impacted your anxiety?
No, it definitely has positively impacted it. It has given me more strength in like my decisions, my opinions, like how I present myself. You know, like as I said in first year, when people just assume that like baggy clothes equals gay for some reason. I literally don't know where that came from. But like now that I'm like, well, whatever, I can like wear different things and express myself how I want, and that doesn't mean anything. Like you know, and other people will reach that conclusion eventually, but you're going to meet people that don't think that. No, it has definitely given me more confidence in how I like dress myself and like express myself.
Dress and express.
I mean, now that we've graduated, I'm going to do like fashion design, and I see clothes as like so like one of the most important things like in expressing yourself. Like it is literally you, like it's just an extension of yourself, and I think that is like has been like my savior in like being able to give me confidence and like reassure me that like I am like who I am. Yeah,
genuinely, if I feel like anxious or like I'm like dissociating, I just start thinking about clothes. Like I'm like planning all these clothes that maybe I'll like have one day in my mind for like specific scenarios to like help me like be my true self.
Yeah. I have such like a strong saboteur in my brain that always is telling me like, no, like you're bad at everything, like you can't do that, or like I wear something that I want to wear, and sometimes my anxiety does pop out and he's like, you look ridiculous, like why would you go out like that? Like I mean, that is also me being anxious about how I like dress and stuff is also like from my past relationships. Like I would put something on and someone would, like one of my ex-boyfriends would be like, are you seriously going out like that? Like really? Like or, oh, I think you should change. Or, like, oh, I don't think that's suitable for like what we're doing.
Yeah, no.
And for some reason I was like, yeah, you're right, I'll go change.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this the other day as well, because my partners have done that in the past as well. Yeah, like dressing not to be sexy and like not to attract guys, but just genuinely, like to express yourself. Anyway, I feel like we should wrap up because this is getting a bit long and also a bit rambly. But yeah, thank you so much for joining and telling us about your experiences. I hope that like some people, I mean, I know some people will relate, and I hope that like the advice that you gave and even just like hearing what other people have experienced in the segment is helpful to anyone who's like anxious or has anxiety.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important to talk about these things, and also like the success of like mental health isn't some like, you know, like angelic being somewhere, like it's really in reach, but also like not everyone is going to like reach the same conclusion at the same pace.
Yeah.
It's important to see like your journey is unique and like don't compare it to anyone else as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, thank you, and
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
do you want to like tell people to follow you on Instagram or like any social media?
If you want, you can follow me on my Instagram. It's STDYIO, like studio, but without vowels for some reason.
Okay. Cool. And as always, you guys know where to find us on Instagram at Sextras Podcast, Facebook Sextras Podcast, our website www.sextraspodcast.com. Please leave us a review, but only nice reviews.
Only nice reviews.
Not
No
one-star
1 stars,
reviews.
thank you very much.
And share it if you're enjoying the podcast. And yeah, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Sextras, presented by Honey Jane Wyatt and Maria Jose Hayodatiyi, produced by Mabel Productions.